Welcome to Swan Island Network's second webinar in our spring series discussing natural disasters, severe weather, and how situational awareness can better help businesses prepare for these phenomena. Today's webinar focuses on thunderstorms, tornadoes, and flooding. When discussing these topics, we'll also touch on how climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic will further complicate how businesses prepare for and respond to these weather systems. If you have any questions during this presentation, enter them into the box on the right and we will answer them during the Q&A session at the end. My name is Lucas Lyons and I am an intelligence analyst here at Swan Island. Joining me today is Miranda Uris, Director of Intelligence and Operations. So in order to set the foundation for this presentation, we are going to start by defining what we mean when we talk about thunderstorms, tornadoes, and flooding, and take a brief look specifically at how they can impact people across the United States. Next, we'll discuss forecasts and predictions for thunderstorms, tornadoes, and flooding this year, along with what we have seen already. After this, we'll consider the impact of climate change and how it may affect how these weather systems look in the future. We'll then examine how the COVID-19 pandemic further complicates the picture. Finally, we'll present how situational awareness can be utilized to mitigate the disruptions and damage this kind of severe weather brings by looking at some notable cases from 2021 so far. At the end, we'll show the schedule for the next webinars on natural disasters and severe weather. The driver behind tornadoes and flash flooding, thunderstorms, can occur year-round and at any time of the day, but are most common in spring and summer months and in the afternoon and evening hours of the day. Thunderstorms bring damaging weather conditions, including lightning, tornadoes, strong winds, floods, and hail. The weather can bring a host of disruptions ranging from outages to transportation disruptions to business closures. Severe thunderstorms are defined as having sustained winds above 58 miles per hour or unusually large hail. They are the most common and damaging type of natural catastrophes in the United States, costing at least $10 billion a year since 2008. And although it isn't certain that the frequency of these storms is increasing, the losses are clearly rising due to population growth and economic development. Property damage from hail can be devastating to crops, buildings, and vehicles. Steve Bowen, a meteorologist at Aon, has said hail can contribute as much as 50% to 80% of severe convective storm losses in any given year, with tornadoes, wind, and flooding providing the rest. Tornadoes are defined as a violently rotating column of air touching the ground, usually attached to the base of a thunderstorm. Tornadoes form beginning with wind shear, when winds move in different directions on top of each other. And in the Midwest and Great Plains, this originates from moist air coming off the Gulf of Mexico, plus dry wind associated with the jet stream blowing in from the west. The next ingredient is your thunderstorm. And when these feature rotating updrafts, they create supercells, which basically give you a recipe for tornadoes. They often form quickly, move quickly, and don't last long, at least compared to a slow-moving hurricane, which meteorologists can monitor over the long term using satellites. A tornado seemingly comes out of nowhere, making it difficult to alert the public of the threat. Scientists are still grappling with the monumentally complex physics at play. A tornado is essentially a swirling funnel of data you can't get anywhere near. Instead of targeting the tornado itself, meteorologists instead predict where these tornado-birthing supercells may emerge, at a resolution of about 3 kilometers. Tornadoes can produce wind speeds over 200 miles per hour and are considered the most violent storms, causing 60 to 65 fatalities and 1,500 injuries each year. The severity of a tornado is ranked based on its score on the enhanced Fujita scale. The score is determined by the wind speeds generated by a tornado, which rates how much damage they cause and takes into account variables such as building type, structures, and the sizes of trees. A 0 reflecting a tornado that may cause minor damage, and a 5 reflecting an extremely destructive tornado. Flooding is defined as an overflow of water onto normally dry land and is the most common and costly natural disaster in the United States. 98% of counties across the US have experienced a flooding event, and the risk of flooding is only increasing. In the last decade alone, floods have led to over $155 billion in property damage, and they continue to account for the majority of federally declared disasters. On top of this, population growth is accelerating in flood-prone areas faster than areas that aren't prone to flooding. For this presentation, we are focusing more closely on the flooding that results from thunderstorms. AccuWeather is predicting that the weather pattern for this spring will be similar to that of 2011, which was an extremely active year for severe weather, with over 800 tornadoes reported in April of 2011, a record for the most tornadoes in a single month. St. Louis, Missouri, Little Rock, Arkansas, Jackson and Tupelo, Mississippi, Nashville and Memphis, Tennessee, Lexington and Paducah, Kentucky, and even Indianapolis, Indiana are the areas that AccuWeather is projecting the highest risk of severe thunderstorms through May. This year, we have already seen severe weather cause widespread outages, business closures, transportation disruptions, and loss of life and injury. Just a couple weeks ago, we saw a cluster of storms in the south leave 3 dead, widespread damage, and thousands without power. In addition to this, a total of 180 tornadoes have been confirmed in 2021 so far, including devastating tornadoes in Alabama, North Carolina, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, and Georgia. This aligns with a typical pattern that sees these states near the Gulf, sometimes called Dixie Alley, experiencing severe thunderstorms and tornadoes earlier in March and April, while May and June are often peak months for tornadoes further north and west. Scientists have evidence that climate change is greatly impacting some weather systems, but also have inconclusive evidence of a correlation with other weather systems. There is limited evidence of a link between climate change and severe thunderstorms and tornadoes. However, scientists have found a link between climate change and extreme precipitation. The National Climate Assessment found that heavy downpours are increasing nationally, especially over the last 3 to 5 decades. The heaviest rainfall events have become heavier and more frequent, and the amount of rain falling on the heaviest rain days has also increased. As a result, this has increased flooding events across the United States, especially in the Midwest and Northeast regions, where the National Climate Assessment found the largest increases in heavy rain amounts. So, why is it important to understand and stay updated on these weather disasters? Severe weather impacts the day-to-day lives of Americans every year, the most devastating impacts being loss of life and injury. In addition, severe weather can lead to disruptions ranging from power outages to transportation disruptions to business and supply chain interruptions, all of these leading to economic costs. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, presents the costs and losses of natural disasters in the United States from 1980 to 2021 in a report. Severe thunderstorms and flooding are some of the most disastrous weather systems in the US. Severe thunderstorms have led to 1,766 deaths in the United States since 1980, and flooding has led to 617. Economic costs of severe thunderstorms amount to $294.2 billion, and costs for tornadoes amount to $153 billion. In addition, severe thunderstorms are the most frequent of the disasters presented, accounting for 45.4% of billion-dollar events. While there is inconclusive evidence that climate change is increasing the frequency of severe thunderstorms, it is clear that the costs are rising. As a result of economic development and population growth, severe thunderstorms are leading to a larger economic cost. In this graphic, you can also see the uptick in both the severe storm count and cost that was seen in 2011. As noted earlier, AccuWeather is predicting a similar weather season in 2021 to that of 2011. Power outages are one of the most disruptive impacts of severe weather. Outages can lead to disruptions in communication, water, and transportation, can lead to closure of retail businesses, grocery stores, gas stations, ATMs, banks, and other services, can lead to food spoilage and water contamination, and it can even prevent the use of certain medical devices. And the number of weather-related outages has increased over the years, and severe storms continue to account for the largest share of them. Between 2003 and 2012, nearly 60% of all weather-related outages were caused by heavy rain, thunder showers, high winds, and lightning. With increasing weather-related outages, it is important to stay informed on the weather system that cause these outages. The COVID-19 pandemic has further complicated the severe weather picture. With many businesses moving to remote work, it has become more difficult to safeguard a distributed workforce as well as keep them connected and online. A recent study from Pew Research Center found that 54% of employed adults that work from home would want to work from home after the coronavirus outbreak ends. With this in mind, it is important to be able to adjust to monitoring the impacts of severe weather over a wider area and not just an organization's properties. While businesses may have protocols in place for directing personnel to a shelter or safe cover area during a tornado, extra steps and planning are required for establishing protocols for a newly remote workforce. On top of this, hospitals that are already directing resources towards COVID-19 patients are confronted with the task of serving additional patients in the wake of natural disasters. Additionally, outages can impact the use of certain medical devices along with the storage of COVID-19 vaccines. With more and more resources being directed to dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, less are available in the wake of natural disasters. Locations that would normally be used as evacuation sites are being used as COVID-19 vaccination or testing sites. Now that we've explored these disaster types, their associated costs, disruptions, and externalities, as well as the extra challenges introduced by the pandemic, I will turn it over to my colleague Miranda, who will illustrate how we here at Swan Island Networks keep organizations well informed to make proactive decisions in the face of these threats.
Thank you so much, Lucas. So when it comes to these natural disasters or any of the ones discussed in the rest of this series, we know that businesses have a lot to juggle and adapt to when considering changing climate patterns, as well as reshaped workforce footprints thanks to the pandemic. 40% of businesses do not reopen after disaster, and another 25% fail within 1 year, according to FEMA. Before crisis ever hits, security and business continuity teams know that planning and protocols around preparedness, response, and recovery are key to minimizing costs and weathering the storm. Part of being prepared for severe thunderstorms, tornadoes, and flash flooding means assessing the threat they pose to your business and personnel, which may have shifted significantly in the past year if remote workers are spread across a wider area. You also need to take steps to avoid or minimize damage by constructing buildings to withstand these threats and maintaining them well. On a shorter term, preparedness priorities should include securing people, properties, equipment, and vehicles from flying debris, damaging hail, and floodwaters, and having backup power generators and multiple modes of communication. Rehearsing procedures ahead of time will reveal gaps or other issues with your plans. An efficient and effective communication, both before, during, and after these disasters is vital. In case regular modes of communication go down, radio alerts from forecasting systems, such as the emergency alert system, are one good way to stay apprised of developments and warnings. According to NOAA, the current average lead time for tornado warnings is 13 minutes, leaving only minutes to react. To be more proactive in these situations, technology solutions can enhance awareness of these developing threats much further in advance. At Swan Island, we've spent years monitoring developing storm systems and delivering information along the preparedness and response timeline through our combinations of alerting and dashboards, which can be fully customized to fit a business's unique footprint through proximity alerting and filtering. These can be monitored on our cloud-based dashboards and delivered to security professionals or people across the organization via email or SMS. Here you can see a couple of alerts for Alabama from the tornado outbreak late last month. Our analyst team closely monitors reports from the Storm Prediction Center, as well as what people report locally on the ground, curating near real-time reports with images, videos, outage maps, and more. Some typical alerts include details like confirmed tornado touchdowns, damage and casualty reports, utility outages, and both ground and air transportation disruptions, such as an airport or interstate shutdown. Dashboards integrate asset and risk data from across many information sources into a common operating picture so that you can quickly ID critical events. This general severe weather dashboard includes alerts from the NWS as well as Environment Canada, with map overlays displaying watch and warning areas, as well as news and meteorologist discussion. The graphics on the right show convective outlooks, where you can tell at a glance if severe weather is expected in the coming days. This alert example shows a tornado watch area with NWS graphics that include threat information and potential exposure. Other real-time automated alert types include watches and warnings for severe thunderstorms, tornadoes, and flash flooding, all issued by the NWS, as well as hyperlocal reports with damage and hazard reports that can also be automated, alerting businesses to things like downed power lines on their street. So how do all of these elements come together? On this slide, we lay out the timeline of how and when we monitor and deliver alerts in a developing storm. As mentioned previously, tornado warnings have that average lead time of only 13 minutes, so we do offer some monitoring options that give you more of a heads up than that. The SPC Outlook maps show meteorologists' best guesses for severe weather development. Typically, the potential for damaging weather over a wide area can be predicted a day or more in advance. Around this time, our analysts publish forecasts for major weather system development. If conditions develop that are favorable for tornadoes, SPC forecasters issue a severe thunderstorm or tornado watch that typically lasts 4 to 6 hours. In TX360, these watches and warnings automatically populate on our dashboards and can be delivered to smart alerts with asset proximity indicated. During the watch, the NWS recommends people review tornado safety rules and be prepared to move to a place of safety if threatening weather approaches. Tornado warnings are issued by the NWS when a tornado is indicated by radar or Doppler and can be issued whether or not a watch is in effect. These usually last around 30 minutes and include where the tornado was located and what towns are going to be in its path. People in that affected area should seek shelter immediately. And if the thunderstorm causing the tornado is also producing torrential rains, this warning may also be combined with a flash flood warning. Updates such as watch or warning cancellations can be enabled in our system. Once the storm impacts can be observed, analyst-curated alerts are issued with details around the specific locations that have been impacted, casualties, damage, evacuations, emergency declarations, and other updates from officials, news, and social media. And that wraps up our presentation. So thank you again to everyone for joining us today. Don't forget to note down the dates for our upcoming webinars. We'll be talking about tropical storms and hurricanes in May as that season gets underway, as well as wildfires and power shutoffs ahead of that season, as well as earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, and the rest. Let's take a look at any questions we've received. Let's see. The first question says, My business is located in California. Do I still need to worry about thunderstorms? Lucas, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure, I can go ahead and answer that one. Good question. So while the threat of thunderstorms is a lot lower in the West Coast, that doesn't mean they don't happen there. Uh, Damaging thunderstorms and even billion-dollar thunderstorms have occurred in California in the past five years. The risk of flooding has also risen. I'm from Napa Valley, and flooding and strong winds have led to road closures, power outages, and not to mention the impact it has on the agriculture. And on top of this, it is important to consider how severe weather can impact travel and supply chains. A flight departing from San Diego might be delayed because of a storm in the Midwest.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. It says, what is the volume of these alerts in TX360? Will I be receiving alerts about storms in Florida when my business is located in New York? Good question. I know Florida's seeing some severe weather today. Lucas, do you want to answer that one as well?
Yeah, I can go ahead and answer that one. So based on your interest in monitoring these storms, you can customize and filter the type of alerts you receive. You can decide a radius around your assets or asset, which can be anything with a location, such as an office or a person, or you can even draw a custom polygon or route in the zones you are most interested in. And so each alert is going to be geotagged, so you can easily filter out alerts that are happening far from your assets. You can also decide if you want to limit your alerts to the essential watches and warnings to reduce the amount of alerts that are sent, further before an event is going to happen.
Absolutely. Our final question here says, does TX360 help outside of tornado season? I'll take that one. Yes, absolutely. TX360 goes far and beyond just the severe weather picture talked about in this webinar, and even beyond the natural disasters in the rest of the series. So, uh, you know, covering all hazards beyond just the natural disasters like wildfires, hurricanes, and earthquakes, but also security incidents and transportation disruptions and things like the spike in active shooters we've seen recently. Um, but as for looking at tornado season, it is still important to note that although these spring months tend to see the highest number of these severe thunderstorms and tornadoes, it's important to note that they can occur almost anywhere, almost any time of the year. And take a place like Texas, for example, where they see a spike in October for tornadoes. So it's important to have some system that is monitoring these things outside of a given season, because you don't want to be caught unaware, especially when these develop so quickly and have such devastating impacts. Alrighty, Lucas, thank you for joining me today along with all of our attendees, and we look forward to doing more of these presentations as we continue throughout the series, and hope to see you all there. Take care, everyone.